I could feel the tension coiling in my stomach the moment my father cleared his throat and placed his fork on the table, the metal clink loud in the sudden hush of our dining room. My mother, Elizabeth, folded her napkin with the care of someone about to reveal a secret too heavy to carry any longer. Across from me, Claire, my younger sister, home from her interminable gap year travels, watched with eager innocence, oblivious to the storm gathering around her. I forced my fingers to relax around my wine glass, the red liquid sloshing gently against the rim, as I tried not to look at the empty seat at the head of the table, reserved for Mom's big announcements. I had barely touched my roasted chicken when Dad spoke, voice steady and measured. "Nina, we've been talking," he said, using my name instead of the usual darling or honey. In our family lexicon, that shift alone signaled something serious, and we have decided to give Claire your apartment. My eyes snapped up. What? The word escaped me before I could clamp down on it. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor as I sat up straighter, heat flooding my cheeks. Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. "Wait, Mom, Dad, did you just say my apartment?" Her voice trembled with confusion, and for a moment I saw the old Claire, 5 years younger, under my arm as we crossed the street, fearless in her sneakers, peeking through the new world traveler persona she'd slipped into. "Didn't you say it was a wedding gift?" she murmured. "It still is," Dad said, brows knitting. We think it makes more sense for her to live there now." He gestured at me. "You've graduated, you're moving into a job in the city." She's still figuring things out. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I clipped my tongue. "I'm figuring things out too," I said, voice lower than I intended. "But my lease doesn't end until April, and I love that place." The past 2 years, that apartment on Emerson Street had been mine alone, a space painted seafoam green, where I learned to cook for one, to pay bills on time, to come home after heartbreak, and know exactly whose bed I'd crawl into. Mom's eyes shimmered. "We know, sweetheart. But Claire needs it more. She's starting law school in September. We thought it would help." I pressed my lips together. There was nothing noble, nothing generous in the way they said it. It felt like a betrayal, a public dismissal of every lease payment, late-night cat-sitting gig, and weekend of binging French cooking videos I'd endured to make that apartment my own. And all of their congratulations about my promotion to editorial assistant at Greenwood Press, a stepping stone, they'd called it, meant nothing now. "What about my rent money?" I asked, hands curled into fists beneath the table. "I've been paying $300 extra a month to cover some of the utilities." Dad shifted in his chair. "We'll compensate you. With the rent you've paid so far, plus a little extra. Think of it as a bonus." I laughed, a dry sound that cut through the room. "A bonus? You're giving my home to someone else, then handing me back the money I already paid?" I felt my voice rising. "That's not even close to fair." Claire blinked at me, confusion clouding her expression. "Nina, I'm sorry, I didn't know this was." "It's not on her," I said. Quiet now, deliberately so. "It's on you." My eyes flicked to Mom, whose face tightened. "I want to see the lease. I want to see any paperwork you signed transferring it." I let the words hang in the air like a dare. Mom opened her mouth, closed it again. Dad cleared his throat. "We can look at it later," he said, eyes never meeting mine. "Right now, let's finish dinner." I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping hard. "No," it was louder than I meant, and everyone flinched. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this. Not tonight." I shoved my napkin into my lap and stood. "Excuse me," and without waiting for their protests, I turned and marched out of the room. The night air hit me like a slap as I burst onto our front porch. I left the door ajar behind me, my sandals slapping against the wooden steps as I descended. I didn't look back until I'd reached the sidewalk, heart pounding so hard I thought my throat might squeeze shut. I needed to breathe, to think, but more than that, I needed space away from the betrayal that had just unfolded like a grotesque puppet show in my parents' pristine dining room. I wandered down Emerson Street, the lights from the brownstones casting long, soft-edged pools of glow against the asphalt. It was the same block where my apartment sat, just a few doors down, where the ivy climbed unevenly up red brick, where I'd learned to bake banana bread and survived my first broken heart. Tonight, though, it was simply a place to disappear for a while, to remind myself I still belonged somewhere. When I arrived at the wrought iron gate of number 12B, I realized I didn't have my keys. I had shoved them into my pocket in the rush out of the house, but in the chaos, they'd slipped out. I patted every pocket, my panic spiking. Of course the universe would choose tonight to steal my keys. I reached into my purse, rifled through the crumpled receipts and makeup pouch, but it was no use, gone. I sank onto the bottom step and leaned my head against the cool metal railing. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over reply, but the urge to explain evaporated. What could I say? "Our parents stole my life and handed it to you?" I locked the phone without responding. A distant scrap of laughter drifted from a neighbor's window. My chest tightened. How had everything become so surreal? For 2 years, I'd envisioned this night as ordinary key and lock episode of that true crime show I'd promised myself I'd get caught up on, maybe half a bottle of wine before bed. Instead, I was stranded outside the roof that had sheltered me through heartbreak and triumph, outside the sanctuary I'd built. I sat there, shoulders slumped, until I realized I wasn't alone. A figure stood at the top of the steps, their silhouette outlined by the faint foyer light. "Hey," came a soft voice. "You okay?" I blinked, suddenly aware of how silly I looked, 26 years old, in a flowy sundress, sitting on the doorstep like a spurned teenager. "Who?" I began, then paused. The stranger's features came into view, mid-30s, lean frame, dark curls falling over thoughtful eyes. They wore a well-worn leather jacket and held a backpack slung casually over one shoulder. "Sorry," they said, offering a small shrug. "I live across the street, 12A. I saw you pacing and figured, are you locked out?" I opened my mouth to protest. "I'm fine, really." But the weight of my night pressed down like a physical force. My voice came out in a raspy whisper. "Yes." They nodded and smiled, the kind of smile that felt genuine instead of polite. "I have a spare key." Landlord said to hold on to it in case of, emergencies. They dug into their pocket and produced an old brass key on a chipped keyring. "Hope you don't mind, but I figured you needed it more than me tonight." I stared at the key as if it were a lifeline. "Oh, thank you." My voice wavered. "That's really kind." They stepped down and sat on the second step beside me, careful not to crowd my space. "Name's Sam," they said, extending a hand. I took it, surprised at how warm and steady it felt. "Nina." "Nice to meet you, Nina." Sam slipped the key onto a finger and handed it to me. "Open sesame." I chuckled despite myself and stood inserting the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, as though it had been made for this moment. The door swung open with a creak that sounded like relief. I slipped inside, turning back to see Sam on the step, hands stuffed into their jacket pockets. I hesitated, then said, "Do you want to come in for a glass of wine? I could use some company." Sam's eyebrows rose, and for a beat I worried I'd misstepped. Then they flashed me that easy smile. "I'd like that." I flicked on the entryway light, revealing my tiny home sweet home sign above the doorframe. The apartment smelled faintly of basil and lemon from the dinner I'd abandoned, and the living room lights glowed warmly. My furniture was modest, hand-me-downs from a thrift store, a battered bookshelf full of novels, a desk cluttered with manuscripts in various states of disarray, but it was mine every inch. I led Sam to the small kitchen, where a nearly empty bottle of Pinot Grigio sat alongside two delicate wine glasses. I grabbed them both, heart hammering with an odd mixture of vulnerability and hope. "Sorry it's not something fancier," I said, setting the glasses on the counter. Sam waved a hand. "Trust me, this is perfect." They perched on the stool by the island, backpack dropping to the floor with a soft thud. "Your place has character." I poured the wine, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest as I handed one glass to Sam. I took a sip of my own, the cool liquid sliding down my throat. The tension in my shoulders eased fractionally. "Thank you, Sam, for the key and for not calling the cops or pointing and laughing." They laughed, a genuine, easy sound that made the lights above us seem to brighten. Well, cops tend to overreact, and if I wanted to laugh at random strangers, I'd dance more in public. I cracked a smile, and something in the air shifted. The cramped anxiety of the evening eased into an unexpected warmth. I gestured at the counter. "Want some cheese? I have some brie and a bag of crackers." "I'm in," Sam said, hopping off the stool to rummage in the fridge. They produced a small container of spreads. Fig jam, sun-dried tomato pesto. "I have some olives too if you're into that." I was into everything in this moment. I grabbed the crackers and set out a modest spread on a wooden board. We settled back at the island, nibbling and sipping wine, the conversation stuttering at first, pleasantries, occupation. "I teach yoga online," Sam said. "My job at Greenwood. I swear it's more interesting than it sounds." Then the floodgates opened. I told Sam about the dinner table bomb, the apartment, the betrayal, the dashed dreams of independence. I watched as their eyes softened, shoulders nodding with sympathy. "That's awful," Sam said, voice quiet. "You should never have to fight for your own home." I shrugged, pressing down the sting. "Yeah, but here we are." They reached across the island, placed a hand over mine. The sudden warmth of that touch sent a shiver through me. Well, Sam said, their lips curving, tonight, you have a new place to be, here with me, if that's okay. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them away. It's more than okay. We talked until the wine ran out, and the moonlight spilled through my windows, painting silver patterns on the floor. I learned that Sam had moved to the city a year ago, carrying nothing but a suitcase, a dream to open a community studio, and a stubborn heart. I told them about my own dreams, to write, to publish, to live in a place that was mine. They listened, nodding, encouraging, never once glancing at the clock. When I finally glanced up and saw the time past midnight, I felt a pang of regret that the night was ending. But Sam just smiled. Don't worry about it, they said. My landlord said, you could keep the spare for as long as you need. My heart clenched. I pictured the key glinting in my palm, a promise that I wasn't entirely alone. Thank you, I whispered, voice thick. They stood stretched. I should head home, Sam said. But, you know where I am if you need backup. I walked them to the door, stopping on the step as they turned the key in the lock. Then, in the golden glow of my foyer light, Sam looked at me, really looked, and said, softly but clearly, you deserve a home that stays yours. I nodded, unable to speak. The weight of those words settled around me, transforming the night into something gentle and full of possibility. They stepped away, pausing at the sidewalk. Good night, Nina. Good night, Sam. As the door closed behind me, I realized that tonight had given me more than just a spare key. It had given me a reminder that belonging isn't just about four walls and a lease. Sometimes it's about strangers who show up when you're empty-handed and leave you holding something far more precious. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the gauzy curtains in my living room, painting dusty motes in the air gold. I blinked awake on the couch, still wrapped in Sam's oversized leather jacket, the one they'd left draped across my shoulders like a protective shield. My head throbbed gently, a souvenir of last night's wine and tears, but beneath it buzzed a warmth I hadn't felt since I first turned that brass key in the lock. I shifted, pillows rustling, and realized that for the first time in days, I actually felt safe. My phone lay on the armrest, screen glowing with notifications. I reached for it, half expecting messages from my parents, apologies, follow-up demands, heated arguments. Instead, I found a morning greeting from Claire. Hope you got home okay. We should talk. Love you. And below that, a text from work. Reminder, editorial planning. Meeting at 10 o'clock. Don't be late. Finally, a message from Sam. I'm at my yoga studio this morning. Feel free to pop in when you're ready. There's fresh coffee here too. My chest tightened. I smiled, despite myself. I really could breathe again. I stretched, disentangling myself from the jacket, and shivered as it slid to the floor. I padded to the kitchen in socks, flicked on the kettle, and realized I had almost nothing to eat. Just a lonely, half-used bag of granola, and 2 sad bananas. Perfect. I poured cereal into a bowl, ruminating on last night's conversation with Sam, the way they had listened without judgment, how their hand had felt warm on mine when they said I deserved a home that stayed mine. For the first time, I believed it. Coffee finished brewing. I poured a steaming mug and propped up my feet on the coffee table. I stared at the apartment's small living room, my notebooks on the battered coffee table, the stack of unpaid bills tucked beside them, the framed watercolor of my college graduation perched on the mantel. It was still my place, for now. If my parents had found a way to co-opt my lease legally, I'd fight it, but I also realized that maybe I needed more than a piece of paper to feel at home. I needed someone who saw me, believed in me. A place could be taken away. People, if you chose wisely, could stay. I sent Sam a quick thumbs-up emoji in reply. See you soon. Then I threw on jeans and a cozy sweater and locked the door behind me, slipping the brass key back into my pocket. I descended the narrow staircase, catching a glimpse of my reflection in the window, eyes bright, determination curling at my lips. Time to claim my life again. 10 minutes later, I spotted Sam's Sanctuary Yoga sign down the block, a cheery lotus flower painted in teal and gold. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, and I hesitated, feeling the low hum of sneakers against bamboo floors and the faint scent of eucalyptus and sage. Sam stood behind a small counter, tying a mint green apron around their waist. They looked up, grinned, and waved me over. Morning, they said, voice warm. How'd you sleep? Surprisingly well, I admitted. Thanks to you. I held up the jacket. I feel like it's still wrapped around me. They shrugged, eyes soft. It's yours to keep if you want. Consider it a token of whatever you want it to be. I hesitated, then draped the jacket over my arm. Thank you. But I should probably get coffee. I gestured at the counter, where a French press and 3 mismatched mugs sat beside a container of beans. You weren't kidding. This smells amazing. Sam bustled behind the counter, scooping beans into the press. The cafe owner in me recognized care. They'd measured 2 tablespoons per cup, filtered the water to the perfect temperature. After a moment, they poured coffee into a chipped ceramic mug and slid it across to me. I cradled the mug, inhaling the rich aroma. Taking a sip, I savored the smooth, nutty flavor. This is the best coffee I've had in ages. Not for profit yet, Sam said with a wink. But one day, they leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So what's today's plan? I shrugged, the comfortable chatter easing the morning nerves. First, I need to face the editor at Greenwood Press. Then I need to text Claire back. After that, I'll figure it out. They studied me, thoughtful. Let me know if you need backup, or just moral support. They tapped the counter twice. Either works. I smiled, grateful. I might take you up on that. We stood in companionable silence, watching yoga mats roll out in the studio behind us, and light pour through floor-to-ceiling windows. After a final sip of coffee, I checked my watch. I should go. Thank you truly. They nodded. Call me anytime. They reached around the counter and handed me a small card, their studio's schedule on one side and on the flip, in neat handwriting, Sam Ellis, 12, A. Emerson St. Spare Key. Emergency only. I tucked it into my jeans pocket, and we exchanged a small wave before I headed out. The elevator at Greenwood pressed me into its polished walls. My reflection stared back, hair slightly mussed, jacket button undone. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and walked into the open-plan office, past the frosted glass doors of colleagues typing away at desks. The receptionist nodded as I passed. I smiled, lifting my chin. I belonged here, or wanted to. In the conference room, my editor Marisol sat at the head of the table, pointer tapping a series of charts on the screen, upcoming titles, production timelines, budget forecasts. She looked up as I entered, her dark eyes sharp but not unkind. Nina, she said, placing a file on the table. Glad you made it. I slid into the chair beside her, placing my coffee on a coaster. Of course, she flipped open the file. About this April release. I wanted you to pitch a new promotional angle. Sales have been flat for the last 2 months, and we need fresh energy. I swallowed. Right. For a moment I felt my mind blank. After last night's emotional upheaval, was I even coherent? Then a spark flared. I pulled out my notebook and flipped to a blank page. What if we focus not on the author's credentials, but on the story's setting as a character in itself? We can create a micro-documentary, short, 90 seconds, profiling the village where the novel takes place, using interviews with locals, ambient sound. Discover the town that time forgot. Marisol raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. Very immersive. She tapped her pen. It would be budgeted under marketing, so we'd need stakeholder buy-in. But I like it. Can you flesh it out as a proposal by tomorrow? I nodded eagerly. Absolutely. Her lips quirked. Anything else? I hesitated, remembering the fabric of my new conviction. Actually, yes. I'd like to propose an author spotlight video that highlights diverse voices, 1 per quarter. Year-long series. It's good for PR, aligns with our values, and could open us to a broader audience. Marisol leaned back, evaluating. Then she said, Okay, I'm impressed. You've clearly been thinking. She opened the file and scribbled notes. Great. Keep this up, and we'll talk about your title in May. My chest swelled. Thank you. She smiled, a genuine warmth. Don't stop, now get back to work. And Nina, great coffee. I laughed as I gathered my things. I learned from the best. I left the conference room feeling lighter, as though I'd reclaimed some small piece of myself. My parents' betrayal still stung, but I realized it didn't define me. My career, my dreams, my choices, they did. The afternoon sun had edged west by the time I drafted an email to Claire. I'm sorry for how things went down. Let's meet at the cafe on 10th and Vine at 6. I want to figure this out together. Love, Nina. I hesitated before hitting send, then clicked. 30 seconds later, her reply popped up. See you there. Exo relief swelled in my chest. Between tasks at the office, I found myself daydreaming about the cafe, warm lights, Claire's nervous smile, confessions over lattes. I thought about our childhood, sleepovers, whispered conspiracies against bedtime, our pact to always protect each other. Somewhere along the way, that pact had frayed, but I was determined to stitch it back. At 5:45, I slipped out of the office, ignoring surprised glances. The cool breeze greeted me as I walked to the cafe, keys jingling in my pocket, not the brass one, but my house keys. I'd make it home tonight, and I'd keep it. Inside the cafe's cozy glow, Claire sat at a corner table, shoulders tense, dark curls pulled into a loose bun. She looked up, her features softening when she saw me. I slid into the seat opposite, and for a moment we just looked at each other, the hum of the cafe around us like a lullaby. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I overreacted. She reached across the table, hand covering mine. No, I'm sorry. I never wanted your apartment. I'd have moved somewhere else if I'd known. Her eyes glistened. I hurt you. Tears pricked my eyes. I hurt you, I echoed. Because I lashed out. But you didn't deserve it. I brushed my thumb along her knuckles. I love you, Claire. I don't want my home to become your prison. Or mine. She bit her lip, nodding. I know, and I love you. I'm grateful for what you've done for me. But I don't want charity. I want my own life. I smiled, relief flooding me. Then let's find you a place together. Next week, we'll tour apartments, set a budget, split the deposit, whatever it takes. And Mom and Dad can chip in as a graduation gift, because we deserve better than ultimatums. She grinned, the tension melting. Deal. We flagged down the barista, 2 cappuccinos with extra cinnamon, and toasted sisters. The word felt sacred, knitting us back together. That evening, I slipped back into my apartment, the brass key cool in my palm. The living room was quiet, peaceful. I flicked on lamps, the soft light settling like a blanket. I spread notebooks and papers on the coffee table, ready to write, fully and without apology. I poured a final glass of wine and sank into the couch. Words tumbled out, scenes of last night's escape, Sam's kindness, Claire's tears, the ache of betrayal, the fierce joy of reclaiming home. My characters danced on the page, raw and alive. Hours later, I closed my laptop, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling. I glanced at the clock, past midnight. I rubbed my eyes, then noticed a message on my phone. Hey Nina, sorry to text so late, but I was thinking about you. If you're up, my door's open. Sam beneath it, a second note. Also, my landlord emailed. He's okay with giving you the spare key officially. Let me know when you can pick it up. I stared at the words, heart fluttering. A rush of gratitude and something deeper bloomed in my chest. Sam had opened a door, literally and figuratively, when I needed it most. And now they offered me a choice to walk through that door, or to stay in my newly reclaimed apartment, writing and rebuilding. I typed back, thank you. I'll drop by tomorrow morning. Then I set the phone aside and turned off the lamp. The apartment was still, shadows lengthening. For the first time, I felt that being truly at home wasn't just about walls and keys. It was about people who saw your worth, who offered shelter when you were at your lowest, who reminded you that you could stand on your own ground, or share it with someone who'd never give in to ultimatums. I drifted into sleep with the brass key under my pillow, the tangible symbol of a night that changed everything. Tomorrow I would reclaim my life, rebuild my bond with Claire, negotiate with my parents, stand firm at my lease renewal. And somewhere between those tasks, I would walk through Sam's door again, not as a desperate stranger, but as someone who deserved refuge and connection, because home, I realized, was never just a place. Home was where you let someone in, sometimes a family member, sometimes an unexpected friend, and discovered that with the right people, you never had to face eviction from your own heart.